Hey guys, today we're taking a look at my Volcanic deck. Definitely a deck I wanted to update for a while. So Volcanics are this archetype that are based on destruction, using their resources to destroy things, but also they kind of have a small portion of them that's dedicated to burn, which is kind of the fire, burn kind of things you could do, which uses monsters instead of, the traditional like chain burn, which uses a lot of traps and stuff. So they have additional burn power depending on what cards you're using. So in this deck, I am doing some of that, but it's mostly the standard archetype using the Blaze Accelerators and all that stuff, and I'll get into the cards and kind of how I'm doing this. I've tried to make this deck kind of as pure as possible while still using some support, but there's a lot of variations on it, and I'll probably go into that in the side deck. So first off, Volcanic Rocket, so a really good card, really nice stats, 1900, 1400, and when he's summoned through any means, you search out Blaze Accelerator, which is just really, really good and helps make the deck a lot stronger because of his stats and his searching ability. Then 3 Volcanic Shell, usually the key component to using Blaze Accelerator, so you can search out Volcanic Rocket, try to get Shell, and then keep reusing Shell's effect, which is very nice to continually destroy things on the field. And then we have 2 Royal Firestorm guards. So I think this is very important, kind of mid to late game, to recycle some of the graveyard stuff that you're trying to do. Also gives you some nice draw power in this deck, which is nice when you have a deck that uses a lot of resources. Can be annoying early on when you draw it, but I just think it's very important, like I said, mid to late game. And then 3 Volcanic Counter, a very interesting card that will allow you to do some additional damage, which can be very, very nice and can help you even the playing field when it looks like things are not going well for you. Later in the game, if you're able to be up by a decent amount of points, this can be very dangerous for your opponent to deal with. And then we're running 2 Summoner Monks. So Summoner Monk is really good for this deck because you could dump the additional spells that you don't need, and you're also summoning Volcanic Rocket, and you get that additional search out power. So I think Summoner Monk is really valuable in this deck type. And then we have Volcanic Scattershot. This is more of a fun card. Not everyone uses this, but I think it's really cool to use for this deck. Can really do some crazy things with your opponent's monsters and doing some additional damage, which is a very nice effect. Then 1 Spirit of Flames. You can run 1 or 2 of this, just giving us some additional power to summon and bring out XYZs when we're a little bit low and we need some additional power. Can be interesting. So can be very nice, and that the effect that he becomes 2000 can actually be really strong for your battle phase to get some additional power early on. And in a fire-based deck, Blaster I think can just be really useful, and combined with other stuff, he could be really nice. And mixing with our already normal gameplay style, having a lot in the graveyard, wanting to destroy things, I think it fits in really well. So now for the spell cards, we're going to be running 3 Wildfire. So some people don't run this, some people run it at different amounts. I'm trying to do what Volcanics can do best, so I really like running 3 of this. I really like this card, and I really like having fun with it. And because the ability to get out Blaze Accelerator is pretty nice, I think this can be extremely useful. And then 3 Blaze Accelerator, obviously one of the key components to the deck. 2 MST, 2 Pot of Duality. Not as much special summoning, more consistency, which is important. 1 Foolish Burial to set up some things, and 1 Burial from a different dimension, because we do have things like Volcanic Counter and Blaster. We have a few different things going on that could benefit from something like this. And then Dark Hole. For the traps, mostly staples, but we're also using 2 Phoenix Wing Wind Blasts because discarding cards is not a big deal for us. There are other discard cards that I will talk about in the side deck, but this is one of the most powerful ones nowadays to deal with Synchros and XYZs and things like that. So now for the extra deck, going to be running just 4-star XYZs. You can run 3 and 2 and 1, but I just don't think it's worth it because we don't mind those cards specifically getting into the graveyard, so we're not really going to XYZ with them as much. So we're focusing on the 4 stars, and because we're just running 4 stars, we have a huge variety. So we're running 2 Silent Honor. This is important to mention that we do have some like whole field destruction with Wildfire, so I like having a card like Silent Honor that has ways to protect itself, so you can use his effect, attach, and then use Wildfire later on depending on the field situation, and you'll still have a monster up. So I think that's really cool. He's also just a really good card in general, so I think running 2 is very smart for this deck. Maestroke, again, the same thing as Silent Honor, can help when it gets destroyed, so that's pretty nice. Obviously a good card overall. Ones you'd expect to see: Exciton, Blackship, Abyss Dweller, Diamond Airwolf, Photon. Daigusto, really good in this deck because obviously we have the graveyard stuff and we want to reuse our resources, so Daigusto is very nice for that. Steelswarm Roach helping us out. Gagaga Cowboy, Ragna, another interesting one that we can use. Flame Vixen, one of the ones you can use because we have the Pyro monsters, so that can be an interesting one. It has some interesting effects that I like, but not the most amazing card. Still pretty cool. Pearl to help you get over things. Lavalval Chain could be nice to set up certain things you want to do. So now for the side deck, if you haven't seen a video of mine before, when I talk about the side deck, I'm not talking about a real side deck for matches. I'm just talking about additional cards that might be useful when you're building the deck. You know, cards I've seen some other people run that I think could be really useful. And if you're building your own deck, I really want to suggest these cards, unless you want to make, you know, a pure copy of mine. But I really like people to think about all the choices that they do have access to. So I've seen this deck run with hands, which I can see a lot of decks run with hands nowadays, but I can see the power of a deck like that combined with hands, which is nice. There are some other Volcanic cards. Slicer is an interesting one, but does not help you do any of the things you're trying to do. It does some additional burn damage, but it's only really worthwhile like really early in the games. Otherwise, I'm not a big fan of it. Volcanic Blaster can search out things, but because it doesn't put it on your hand, it's kind of annoying, kind of slow, and you have other ways to search out. You can combine this deck with Flamvells, run Rekindling, do things like that. That's another interesting choice. Volcanic Doomfire you can run if you're using Tri-Blaze. I just think that's too much of an effort to bring this guy out. Yeah, I just think it's really too much. He is a really cool boss, and he has some really cool things he could do with certain field setups, but overall I'm not a big fan of him. If you are going to run a boss, I would suggest Pyrorex because you have additional power to mess with the graveyard. So I think this is not that hard to summon, and I definitely thought about putting this guy in and can be really powerful. If you want to do more of the burn type of the deck, definitely put in Solar Flare Dragon, which can be very, very nice because of how he protects himself with the other Pyros, and you'll keep doing additional damage, which is nice. Snipe Hunter fits in well with the deck type, getting rid of those cards and doing additional destruction without even having Blaze Accelerator, so that's another opportunity. Solidarity, if you're running all Pyro, can help you out, but not really the point of the deck to have that boost. Volcanic Recharge, another way to recycle. We do have Daigusto, but this is another one. You could definitely tech in one of these, and that'll be fine. Spiritual Fire Art can be a really interesting one to finish off your opponent. The one problem is my fire monsters aren't, you know, the strongest in terms of attack. It depends on what you're currently running, but you can do some big things with this, especially with Blaster or with Vixen, you know, depending on what you're doing. Divine Wrath, Regiki Break, you know, just other cards where you discard one, just like Phoenix Wind. So it's just dependent on what's going on and what you want to do. They're both, you know, decent cards. I really like being able to bounce something though. There's also a ton of, you know, specific fire or pyro tech that does burn damage and other things. So Backfire in addition is one of those things because we'll have a lot of cards that might end up getting destroyed, and we'll be able to do additional burn damage. You know, if we could destroy our monsters and do burn damage and then have the additional burn damage from the other plays we have, like with Volcanic Counter, that can really scare your opponent and lead them to really having to slow down and think about what they're trying to do. So that's my Volcanic deck. Definitely very fun. I think it's definitely a little bit kind of an outdated archetype because of how so many decks have destruction. But I think if this deck gets more support down the line and people try some additional things, it could become stronger, and I can see it getting played more. And like I said, I have a lot of fun with it, and I like the archetype a lot. But if you guys do have your own Volcanic decks, maybe you can give me some ideas. You could post some suggestions in the comments below and, you know, just talk about some cards maybe I didn't think about. That could always be cool. I always look in those comments and see if there's any cards that I really want to add to my deck when I put out the next version, as I did when I looked back at my previous Volcanic deck. But that's about it for me. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.